Not too long ago, I went over a video detailing the top 10 best Bankai within Bleach. Some of you have agreed and disagreed with my choices, and it's been a great way to spark discussion within the community. Now I'm back with yet another controversial top 10 video, and this time we'll be going over the 10 worst Bankai to feature within Bleach. I feel that some of the Bankai transformations within the series were underwhelming and generally difficult to utilize properly if the right conditions were not met. This list is based upon the usefulness of the Bankai and the techniques within it. I'll be detailing the weaknesses of each of the Bankai which have led to them making it onto this list. So without further delay, let's dive into my list of the 10 worst Bankai in Bleach. We're kicking things off with the number 10 spot as we have Ichigo's original Tensa Zangetsu, and this is his false Bankai from the Soul Society arc, and we see this used up until the end of the Arrancar arc. I know what you're thinking, Ichigo's Bankai in the 10th spot? Well, I do think that this placement makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at what Ichigo's false Bankai does and what it doesn't do. Ichigo first reveals this Bankai against Byakuya in chapter 162. When we first see it, it is mind-blowing. It's visually impressive with the slick black outfit, the smaller blade, and the incredible speed boost had us all shocked. But Byakuya immediately questions whether if this even qualifies as a true Bankai. He is in disbelief that a normal human could attain Bankai in such a short period of time, and more importantly, he senses that there is something very different about it. The Bankai doesn't follow the typical pattern of massive spectacle that other Bankai transformations have demonstrated. Instead, Ichigo's false Bankai shrinks his oversized Shikai into a compact longsword. Byakuya's suspicions actually were completely justified, and you could say that his commentary was a bit of a foreshadowing. The training that Ichigo underwent to activate Bankai was insane. He achieved Bankai within 2 days by using Urahara's 10 Shintai. This was even faster than Urahara himself, who had taken 3 days with the 10 Shintai. Yoruichi had predicted this, knowing that Ichigo's gifts exceeded even Urahara's, but speed of attainment doesn't equal quality. During the 10 Shintai training, Old Man Zangetsu created a field of identical blades which had forced Ichigo to locate the one true Zangetsu among thousands of fake blades while being relentlessly attacked by Zangetsu. Ichigo's lack of understanding about the nature of all of his powers and Old Man Zangetsu actually suppressing his powers had led to him manifesting an incomplete Bankai. While battling against Byakuya in the Soul Society arc, Ichigo would have most likely lost if White didn't intervene to save him. His inner hollow had to possess him mid-battle. Moving into the Arrancar arc, things got even worse as Ichigo wears his Bankai almost constantly for over 100 chapters. He usually activates it immediately in any battle, so we as the audience immediately get used to it, so it's no longer much of a trump card, as Ichigo's Bankai transformation almost becomes his default state in the Arrancar arc. This is most likely because Ichigo's Bankai form gets replaced by his Hollow Mask manifestation. Ichigo's ordinary Bankai gets outclassed very easily by opponents like Grimmjow and Ukiura. The biggest benefit that Ichigo's false Bankai gives him is compressed speed and power, and there isn't much else that makes it feel like a ultimate ability or transformation. Later in the series, we learn about Ichigo's true Bankai. This is after Old Man Zangetsu reveals that he is actually a manifestation of Ichigo's Quincy powers, and he was suppressing most of Ichigo's Shinigami abilities for the duration of the series. The false Tensa Zangetsu was working with a fraction of Ichigo's actual potential, which explains why it felt so underwhelming compared to other captain level Bankai that we see. But yeah, for the vast majority of the series, Ichigo is stuck with this incomplete version of his Bankai, which fails to live up to our expectations, hence why it's made it on the 10th spot in this list. In the number 9 spot, we have the original Bankai of Mayuri Konjigi Ashisogi Jizo. Again, I'm emphasizing that this is the version of his Bankai before the 1000-Year Blood War arc, so prior to Mayuri upgrading it into the Matai Fukuin Shotai version that he used against Pernida. The original version of Mayuri's Bankai has some serious problems that held it back from being truly effective. In terms of design, it's incredible. The golden caterpillar baby with a halo and bells is genuinely unsettling and memorable. When it first appears against Uryu in chapter 125, it feels threatening for a captain level Bankai, but then we see what it actually does and the cracks begin to show. The main ability of this Bankai is straightforward. It's a poison gas emission which covers a 100-meter radius. Anyone who breathes in this gas or even has it permeate through their skin is poisoned by it. Mayuri keeps the antidote hidden for this poison in his body, while Nemu stores her own antidote in her uniform badge. As far as we know, this Bankai has no other special techniques. Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo is a living biological creature, which means that it's susceptible to being controlled and destroyed by Mayuri's opponents. Against Uryu, the Quincy completely destroys the Bankai itself with his arrows. The thing has no defensive capabilities, it's just a huge target that spews poison. Against Xyle Aparo, things get catastrophically worse when the Espada takes direct control of the Bankai, forcing it to self-destruct. The fact that opponents can hijack and control this living weapon is a bit of a design flaw so fundamental, it's shocking that Mayuri used it for as long as he did. There's a reason Mayuri completely redesigned his Bankai for the 1000-year Blood War arc. The modified version, Konjiki Sogi Ashisogi Jizo Matai Fukuen Shotai, births new forms based upon battlefield data that Mayuri gathers. This gives it actual tactical adaptability. Mayuri's modified Bankai can actually allow it to create custom Ashisogi Jizo, which has 70,000 layers of exposed nerves. This is what he creates in order to counter Pernida's Shrift ability. But yeah, this is what Mayuri's Bankai should have been from the offset. The original version of Ashisogi Jizo is disappointing for a captain level Bankai, and it seems like Kubo had purposefully nerfed Mayuri's Bankai in order to give Uryu a bit more of a chance in his battle against Mayuri during the Soul Society arc. But yeah, this is the reason why it's made it on the 9th spot of this list. The 8th worst Bankai in Bleach belongs to Rose's Kinshara Betodan. This one bothers me because in terms of its pure concept, it is incredible. This is a Bankai centered around music, which creates illusory attacks so convincing that they become real if the victim believes them. The golden dancers with flower faces, the massive conductor's hands in the sky, visually it's one of the most stunning Bankai, and thematically it is perfect for Rose's artistic character. But as is the trend with Vizards, there is always something disappointing attached to them, because Rose himself sabotages his own Bankai through what might be the single most dumbest tactical decision in the series. Against Mask the Masculine in chapter 561, Rose initially dominates the fight as he summons his dance troupe, conducts them with his baton, and he unleashes Sea Drift, creating a vortex of illusory water which makes Mask feel like he's drowning. The technique works flawlessly because Mask believes it to be real, making the illusion functionally reality. Then Rose manifests fireballs that incinerate his target, and both techniques are overwhelming Mask, and Rose is about to win. He's in complete control, he's about to deliver the final blow, but then Rose commits the most unforgivable sin in anime and manga. He stands there and starts explaining everything about his ability. The exact quote is, "My techniques are indeed tricks, I'll tell you what my Zanpakuto controls." As he states it's music, he details how his Bankai uses sound to create illusions, and as long as Mask's heart believes them to be real, they will affect him. In reality, none of it is actually real, it's all an act. He hands Mask the exact information that he needs to counter his Bankai. Mask immediately then ruptures his own eardrums, negating the sound-based Bankai, and within 4 pages of having activated the Bankai, Rose gets taken out, left with a star-shaped hole through his chest. We never get to see what his ultimate ability, a hero's life, actually does because Rose talked himself into defeat. What Rose did here is one of the worst tactical blunders in all of Bleach. He essentially defeats himself through his own arrogance and compulsive need to over-explain his art to his audience. Rose's Bankai isn't actually weak, it's just when you know how it works, it's very easy to overcome. In the number 7 spot, we have another Vizard Bankai, and it's Kensei Muguruma's Tekken Tachikaze. This Bankai suffers from being aggressively one-dimensional. When Kensei activates it in chapter 377, his appearance changes as he gets these sleek knuckle blades, armor which extends over his shoulders, which creates an arch behind him, and the ability to cause continuous explosions with every punch. It's a great Bankai for a close quarters combat specialist like Kensei, but unfortunately this is all that it does. Tekken Tachikaze has no special techniques beyond enhanced explosive punches. The knuckle blades can transform between brass knuckles and spiked gloves, which sound versatile until you realize that it just changes the aesthetic rather than offering any tactical variety to him. Kensei's Bankai channels the explosive power of his Shikai, where he could create air blades and Bakudan Suki blasts into concentrated implosions upon impact. These implosions theoretically are able to bypass defense measures by collapsing inward rather than exploding outward, but without any range options or tactical flexibility, it forces Kensei into dangerous positioning where he has to get close to his opponent in order for this Bankai to be effective, with no other alternative option. When this Bankai was used against Wonderwise during the fake Karakura Town arc, Kensei confidently uses it and promptly gets defeated off screen. During the battle against Mask D Masculine in the 1000 Year Blood War arc, he showcases both the Bankai's potential and its severe limitations. Initially, Kensei overwhelms Mask with relentless explosive strikes, pummeling him into submission and seemingly winning the battle. But once James starts cheering and amplifying Mask's power through his superstar ability, the tables turn instantly. Mask catches one of Kensei's explosive punches and breaks his arm, completely shutting down the offensive ability of his Bankai. Even the anime tries to give Kensei a bit more screen time, where he is zombified by Giselle, and he appears to repeatedly batter Pepe with his Bankai in an extended anime exclusive sequence, but even then the results are disappointing, as Masks only has surface level cuts and bruises rather than decisive damage, as these implosions from Tekken Tachikaze should theoretically shred internal organs, but they only manage to give some superficial injuries. Now, fittingly in the number 6 spot, we have the leader of the Vizards, Shinji Hirako's Sakashimi Yokoshimi Happo Fusagari. This Bankai wasn't actually revealed within the manga, but it was actually shown to us first in the Can't Be Unworld light novels, and then it was included in an anime exclusive scene during Core 2 of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. This Bankai is incredible because it simultaneously is incredibly powerful, but also unusable in most situations. It creates a situation where Shinji's ultimate technique is actually less useful than his Shikai in the vast majority of combat scenarios. Shinji's Bankai inverts everyone's perception of friend and foe within its area of effect, causing mass mutual slaughter as allies perceive each other as enemies and they viciously attack. When Shinji uses it in the light novels against a horde of monsters in the Valley of Screams, the creatures tear each other apart while Shinji sits protected inside his flower-like Zanpakuto construct, which encloses its golden petals around him during the chaos, and it opens once everyone has died. There's no denying that it's an incredibly effective Bankai where hundreds of thousands of enemies can annihilate each other without Shinji even lifting a finger, and he uses it in a similar way to defeat a group of soldat in Core 2 of the anime. But the issue with this Bankai is that Shinji cannot use it when any allies are around him. The inversion affects everyone except Shinji himself, and it is indiscriminate, meaning activating it near comrades guarantees that they'll kill each other, thinking that they are fighting enemies. I wouldn't be surprised if the Central 46 have banned Shinji from using this Bankai in the Serete. In the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, Shinji briefly speaks with Shunsui. The head captain confirms that he has actually read up on all of the captain's Bankai abilities, and he knows exactly what Shinji is planning to do. Shunsui asks Shinji to try his best to catch up once he is finished, as he acknowledges that Shinji is deliberately staying behind alone in order to use his Bankai, which only works in isolation. Shinji's Shikai works best against a single powerful opponent, while his Bankai is designed for crowds of weaker opponents. The reason why his Bankai is in the 6th spot is because of its ridiculously specific requirements for usage. Shinji needs to be isolated, he needs to be standing alone in the middle of a massive crowd of enemies with no allies anywhere nearby, and how often does this actually happen? Again, conceptually it's an incredible Bankai ability, but practically it is very difficult to utilize. In the number 5th spot, we have the incomplete Bankai of Toshiro Hitsugaya, Daiguren Hyorin-maru, and I have to emphasize that this is his pre-1000 Year Blood War arc version. Upon activating his Bankai, ice flows from his Zanpakuto and onto his body. His hands and feet become ice claws with these large oversized ice wings forming from his back. Despite being physically impressive and intimidating, I just feel that before the final arc of the series, Hitsugaya's Bankai was very unrefined. It is incredibly powerful, but its major limitation is that it can only reach a higher level of power after a set amount of time has passed. In some instances of his Bankai activation, 3 flowers made up of ice appear behind him, like when he faces off against Haribel. These flowers are not present when he fights against Luffy earlier in the series. Each of the flowers are made up of 4 purple ice petals. Gradually, as time lapses, the petals disappear until all of them have melted away, and his Bankai evolves to a more mature state. Hitsugaya is a prodigy. At a very young age, he has become a captain, but his physical immaturity means that his body cannot handle the full power of his Bankai. The flower petal system wasn't actually a time limit. It was in fact counting down to the Bankai's complete mature form that his young body couldn't sustain. This incomplete version lacks the absolute freezing power and instant flash freeze abilities of his adult transformation, which we see during the 1000 Year Blood War arc. So the incomplete Daiguren Hyorin-maru is essentially half of a Bankai. It produces large volumes of ice, but without the reality breaking abilities of his complete form, which are able to completely negate supernatural powers upon freezing. This is what results in Hitsugaya's pre-1000 Year Blood War arc Bankai being one of the worst in the series. Another reason why he's made it onto this list is because Hitsugaya is very trigger happy when he activates his Bankai. He has little self-restraint as he immediately activates it only for it to be blasted by the enemy. If I'm not mistaken, Hitsugaya has activated his Bankai in almost every single battle that he has taken part in, and he has lost a lot of those battles in Bleach. We're now moving to the number 4th spot, which goes to none other than Soifon's Jakuo Raikoben. While yes, this is a visually stunning Bankai, it takes the form of an oversized golden missile launcher which covers the entirety of her right arm, and it extends down to the length of her body as well as towering over her, acting as a face shield protecting the right side of her face. Soifon doesn't use her Bankai that often, but the drawbacks to it are evident. Its ridiculous size makes it impractical as it restricts the user's movement, and it's only ideal if an opponent is trapped or distracted unaware of her preparing to fire her missile. While Bleach characters take a great deal of pride in their powers and abilities as they are selective with when and how they reveal the aces up their sleeves, Soifon on the other hand takes a great deal of pride with the fact that she is the leader of the stealth division and is somewhat ashamed that her Bankai power is anything but stealthy. She admits that it is way too big to conceal. Its weight drastically restricts her movement, and when the attack is fired, it causes an incredible explosion that is unfitting for someone who prefers to silently assassinate her targets. Because of the amount of energy that is required to charge up and fire her attack, it has an understandable limit of not being able to be fired more than once every 3 days, since it takes too much of a toll on Soifon's body. However, during a battle against Baragon in chapter 369, Soifon does fire a second missile at the same level of power not too long after she fired the first one. This had ensured that Soifon wasn't going to be of much use for the remainder of the Fate Karakura Town arc, especially after having fired her Bankai twice in such a short period of time. Additionally, firing this large amount of energy for her attack causes a significant recoil that is enough to blow her back, even tearing the steel sash she used to tie herself down to the ground with. Soifon's Bankai is another form that has been improved upon, and it works better during the 1000 Year Blood War arc, but its drawbacks are enough for it to be included at the top end of this worst Bankai list purely because of its oversized, impractical nature that even leaves Soifon feeling reluctant to activate her Bankai. We've now reached the top 3 worst Bankai, and in the 3rd spot we have another pre-1000 Year Blood War arc Bankai, and this time it's the false form of Renji's Bankai Hihio Zabimaru. This is a false Bankai because during the 1000 Year Blood War arc we learned that Zabimaru did not completely recognize Renji, so it had given him a false Bankai name that was unleashing an incomplete Bankai form. This unrealized Bankai transforms Renji Zanpakuto into an oversized creature that has the skeletal structure of a snake. It has an intimidating snake-like head that is decorated with this red ape fur, and Renji's attire also changes in this form as he is now donning a fur coat with an ape skull over his right shoulder. He uses his power to smash the snake head into his opponents, relying on it to bite and inflict serious damage. Renji's attacks in this form are very effective at long range, but it is pretty useless at close range. His Bankai is another oversized form that restricts movement, and it looks better than how it performs. Impressively, Renji's Bankai has several abilities, like being able to break apart and reattach the segments that make up his Bankai. If any segments are broken or damaged, Renji can simply remove them and reform his Bankai once more. In chapter 516, we see Mayuri reveal that the segments of Renji's Bankai that were broken during his battle against Byakuya way back in the Soul Society arc are still actually missing, meaning that they did not heal after all of this time. This means that gradually over time, this false Bankai of Renji's would have become shorter if he were to overutilize his power, leading to more segments of his Bankai being broken, thus rendering them useless. The reason why Renji's Bankai makes it onto the third spot of this list is because of its underwhelming performance. The first time that it was used, Byakuya effortlessly took it out, and any subsequent fights that Renji had been using it in were not all that memorable, since he hasn't taken out any powerful opponents with it aside from Grimmjow's Fraction Yilfit Grands. In the number 2 spot for the worst Bankai is Seijin Komamura's pre-1000 Year Blood War arc Bankai Kokujo Tengen Myo. When Komamura activates his Bankai, he summons a giant puppet that is cladded in a form of living armor, as the giant also wields a large sword different to Komamura's Zanpakuto. The special power of his Bankai allows him to control the giant that he summons, as it copies his movements, allowing him to deal devastating attacks due to its oversized proportions. Despite being really big, the giant can quickly copy Komamura's actions without being slowed down by its size, as it moves as fast as Komamura does. The strength of this Bankai is also its weakness. Because of the strong bond that Komamura shares with the giant, it means that any damage that his Bankai receives will also be reflected onto him. In a way, his Bankai is making himself a larger open target for a powerful opponent. It makes sense that Komamura would only want to keep his Bankai active for a short amount of time because he could eliminate his opponent with a single destructive strike. So he'd have to activate his Bankai and immediately attack the opponent, not giving them a chance to damage the giant. A pretty big upside to this Bankai is that if Komamura is healed, then his Bankai is also healed to the same extent, making his Bankai an exception to the rule that Mayuri had stated about Bankai not being able to heal in chapter 516. It is unfortunate for Komamura's Bankai to make it so low onto this list, because personally I don't really like it and I find it to be an oversized spectacle, with Kubo going for more style than substance with his Bankai. Since this list is composed of dishonorable mentions, there are no honorable mentions here. We're going straight for the kill with the number 1 worst Bankai in the series, and it belongs to none other than Ikkaku Madarame with his impressive but cumbersome Ryumon Hozokimaru. Ikkaku was literally gifted with one of the best transformations for the worst Bankai in the series. After activating his Bankai, he wields 2 large blades that are connected to a large floating blade. His Bankai does give him a boost in his strength, but when it was first activated, it is nowhere near performing at full power. We learn more about his Bankai in chapter 205, where it is revealed that his Bankai does not enhance his speed or his destructive power, but it can deal huge destructive damage. During his battle against the Arrancar, we see him spin his Bankai around, which increases his spiritual pressure. Ikkaku explains that his Bankai is slow to get started since it is asleep whenever he decides to activate it. The only way to awaken its full power is to exchange blows with the enemy. Then when it begins to wake up, the dragon engraving on the middle floating blade begins to glow red. When the dragon turns completely red, this is when Ryumon Hozokimaru is at full power. The first weakness with with Ikkaku's Bankai is that it becomes very brittle to the point of cracking because of the amount of power that it releases, which causes it to crack under pressure. In chapter 516, Mayuri had also stated that Ikkaku's Bankai was permanently weakened after his battle against the Arrancar Edrad. The design of Ikkaku's Bankai is incredible and the reveal was totally unexpected, but aside from this, it is hands down the worst Bankai in Bleach. Even upon activation, it proved to be difficult to wield, and any advantages that Ikkaku had with it are now lessened considering that it is damaged. It just makes me think that he wasted his Bankai against a fresh Yon and didn't even get to properly use it before it was thought to be lackluster. I do think that Ikkaku needs to train and hone his power more, and to be honest, this may be a similar situation to Renji's and his false Bankai. There is every chance that he has not unlocked the true form of his Bankai yet because of a lack of training, or that his Zanpakuto has not properly acknowledged him as its master yet. Hence why when he activates his Bankai, his Zanpakuto is asleep and he needs to charge it up to a awakened state, which does highlight that there is some growth to be had between him and his Zanpakuto. Whatever the case may be, this does not detract from the fact that he has the most disappointing and underwhelming Bankai, especially after how hyped we all were after it was first revealed. We have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about my picks for the top 10 worst Bankai in Bleach? If you agree or disagree with my choices, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. Let me know your own personal top 10 lists of the worst Bankai in Bleach. I look forward to reading all of your comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this one, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.